Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, and this time we take a look at something that is a little bit odd, but kind of harkens back to something we've seen a little bit about before, and is certainly grounds for a little bit of nostalgia here, even if it is recent memory nostalgia that reflects on previous nostalgia. Before we get into it though, I would like to make a quick note here, and that is that if you have not been following on the channel here, there is a new companion series to this series that I launched very recently called Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This series is designed to look at Star Wars home video items in depth, right? Then, of course, we also have my book, A Saga on Home Video, that 3-volume second edition, again, full color, hardback, paperback, or Kindle print replica, as they call it. That is designed to go even more in-depth with sort of the narrative history of Star Wars on home video. Star Wars Home Video Year by Year is different. It is sort of designed to be short episodes that take a quick snapshot of a given year, not looking at every release, but the most prominent US releases, kind of giving that narrative a bit in context so that someone who wanted to see sort of a basic outline of Star Wars home video across time could watch that series in order and get that. Kind of like that Star Wars Year by Year book that I'm so fond of, giving a snapshot of Star Wars in general. So that series is out here on the channel. As of the time that I'm recording this, I have episodes out for 1977 through 1982. I have recorded episodes for 1983 through 1985. The way that those work, I do tend to record them, and instead of releasing them in batches, I will schedule them for release on YouTube, specifically because I need to go in after I upload them, and I go into the description and make sure that every description also links to the episodes from the Star Wars Home Video Library that addresses whatever items are in that episode, and it tells what chapters to find that information, if it is in the book, in either the first or second edition of A Saga on Home Video. So I need a little more time after finishing editing and uploading to actually have it ready for release. But it's a new series. I hope you enjoy it. This series, of course, will continue, but since we look more at individual items as they come in, and we've looked at the bulk of my collection, there's just not a lot to cover here. So I finally did get a chance to launch that new series that I had talked about a little bit previously. But enough about that. What are we looking at in this episode? Well, we are looking at essentially a former rental here. For those in modern day, renting something seems odd when it comes to renting a movie. Even digitally, it seems. Most people will either buy something digitally if they want to keep it, if they're looking at digital, or they'll wait for something on streaming so that they watch the streaming service that they pay monthly for without having to pay for those individual items. People also, of course, still buy physical media, but renting physical media is a relatively rare thing these days. There's not a lot of places that you could still do that at this point. And in the US, of course, we're used to the idea that if you want something digitally, but you buy it physically, most of the time there's a digital copy code that comes with it, so you're essentially getting both versions of it. The entire pattern of how we consume media has changed drastically over the years. Jump back to really the 80s and early 90s, and rental was a huge deal. When Star Wars was starting out on home video, remember, rental wasn't as big. It was starting to grow with things like VHS. That's why even before the home video releases that you could buy for A New Hope, there was a rental version on beta and VHS in the US, and we saw something similar in other regions. Buying VHS was expensive. Renting it was okay, but not super common. Over time, renting and buying VHS became more and more and more common. Eventually that moved on to DVD as well, and so on down the line. But typically doing so meant going to an actual video store, a rental place. It's a weird, surreal experience for those who never experienced it to be nostalgic for going to a store. But really, you'd walk into the store, you'd walk across these shelves, these aisles. Sometimes you'd see the videos themselves packaged in a clamshell to just pick up off the shelf. A lot of times at the ones that I went to, the actual cassettes themselves to rent were in a clamshell, but the original case was sitting on the shelf, and you'd sort of look at the shelf and see the movie's case, and then you'd look behind it to see if the actual video was there to be able to rent. You would rent them sometimes overnight, sometimes for a few days, sometimes with a deal, depending on how new the film was. I know that when I used to go to rent, I think it was Hollywood Video was the final form of the one that I used to go rent at all the time. They had a 5 movies for 5 days for $5 thing, which was awesome, as long as it wasn't a brand new movie. So I watched all kinds of stuff on VHS that I would never have even really considered buying. I just wanted to see all kinds of movies. But it was kind of a cool thing. You know, Blockbuster was a social place. A Hollywood Video was a social place to go and rent stuff. But over time, that very much changed as we saw the advent of streaming and digital purchases and digital rentals and so on. If you want to rent something to watch at home, you don't have to go all the way to the store hoping that they had it to rent. You could just click, 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 rent it digitally through maybe your cable service, through iTunes or whatever it might be. And as that home video rental market was dying and convenience became the thing that was driving people towards digital, there was a push for sort of another version of a convenience style of renting. We had stuff like services like Netflix. Early on, Netflix wasn't as big with a streaming service thing. Netflix was more of a, you set up an account, you let them know what movies you want when they become available, they send them to you, you watch them, you send them back. Sort of a subscription-based rental type service. But McDonald's, yes, McDonald's, the food place, the food company, McDonald's saw a niche in the market and decided to start these little kiosks for various convenient items, ironically called TikTok shops, I believe. Or excuse me, TikTok easy shops. I did just check on my phone, that's why that edit was there. And very quickly decided to stop using them for, you know, convenience type items and instead use them for video rentals. Though in this case, video rentals didn't mean video cassettes like VHS, it was DVDs, and eventually Blu-rays and so on into 4K. And this eventually evolved, this company that they had started, this little sort of segment of the company, I guess you could say, that they started, into what became known as Redbox. And Redbox existed under multiple owners over the years. It recently did kind of wrap up its service as its newest parent company, Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, I kid you not, filed for bankruptcy. But Redbox for a while was this interesting automated kiosk where you could basically go up there, use a touch screen to pick a movie, pay for it, take that movie as a rental, and then bring it back to a kiosk, not even necessarily that kiosk, slide it back into the machine, and it was scanned in as, okay, it was scanned out to you, now it's scanned in almost like a library or a video store. Your rental has been returned and so on. And if you didn't return it on time, there were late fees, and after a certain point of late fees, it was, nope, sorry, now you own it. We're not going to keep charging you late fees, but you basically now have paid off the amount of owning it, and it's yours now, just without a case. Congratulations, you have a crappier version of what you could have just bought at retail. But it was just kind of a unique sort of niche in between where we are now, where streaming is so dominant, and where we were then when buying and especially renting was so dominant. You had this middle ground of, let's find a more convenient way to rent. And we've looked at a lot of former rental stuff before. And rental store specific stuff, specifically to rental stores. You know, Blockbuster had that AFI Century collection that was exclusive to Blockbuster. We saw things like Blockbuster having an exclusive rental version of Fanboys, and eventually that being sold as a used copy and such through Blockbuster. We've seen, one of our earliest things seeing rentals was we saw the 1985 classic Creatures Return of the Jedi absolutely butchered as an example of what video stores used to do when they would take your cassette's case and just chop the crap out of it, remove one of the spines so they could slap it into a clamshell to make it easier to rent. Maybe slapping some Be Kind Rewind stickers and such on it. Look how they massacred my boy. In any event, though, we have looked at previous rental stuff. Well, right now, with Redbox essentially having been shut down, a lot of the Redbox discs are being let go. And this was not something I was really keeping on the radar. I hadn't really thought much about rental stuff in recent memory. But Luke Almendinger, if I'm saying that correctly, hopefully Luke, reached out to me through Facebook. I have a Facebook author page. It is facebook.com/Nathan P. Butler author. It's where I post stuff about like when, you know, my recent, the recent re-release happened of Equals and Opposites through Marvel. And he reached out through there to let me know that he had managed to acquire a Star Wars former rental from Redbox and asked if he could send it along to essentially donate it to the show so that I could feature it here as another of these interesting sort of snapshots in time capsules, you might say, of a former rental Star Wars product and what that meant in context. So we've got the context now. What is the former rental? Well, that is this. Doesn't really mean anything right now because it's just the Redbox packaging here, right? So you have your Redbox packaging, kind of a little plastic case. Questions, contact us at Redbox. These arrows indicate the direction you put it back into the kiosk with instructions on how to do that down here. Return to any Redbox kiosk with this side facing you. The smarter way to watch and play. Get the app today. They did also do streaming and stuff as well, eventually with Redbox. No spine here. And the back is just see-through where you can see the disc. And you can sort of get a hint of what this disc is. This is the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray copy of Solo. Now, in the US, this was the main regular release of that for Solo. We've seen all kinds of different variations and whatnot and store exclusives. But basically, this was Solo's initial home video release with a 4K disc, Blu-ray bonus disc, and then you had your digital copy code. Well, just the 4K disc of this becomes the rental for Redbox. Also looking at the case here, it does say underneath, it has a Redbox logo, always leave full-handed. Get the app and reserve your fave, so you could use that for reservations as well. A barcode side up, please. Then icons and whatnot here. But it's just the regular 4K disc, nothing special. It's not like Redbox had some kind of exclusive or something. But you notice here what they had to do. They needed a way to scan these in and out automatically without needing a human being to do it. So right there around the central hole, you've got the little code that it could scan right there in the center. And if you look at the packaging here, you'll notice that, again, it says put it facing up. Okay, so barcode facing up. I snap it in. When I close it, the one thing that isn't clouded over by the case that has this cutout is the barcode. So literally, it scans it as it comes out to tell the system that, yes, you have rented it. When you're done, plug it back in, it scans it, your rental has been returned. Just like back in the day when we would go to Hollywood Video or Blockbuster or wherever, and they would take it and go beep, right? And they'd use a little scanner to scan the barcode to let the system know that something is out when they're putting in your contact information and so on. Just a newer version of that. I just found it very interesting. I had not thought to look for former rental stuff in the modern era. The most recent former rental stuff I've got is DVD, which is a little bit more common, but that's going back to like the Blockbuster days and the physical stores where you still would have to go and get it in that case. In this case, this is a great little snapshot of this unique midpoint within Star Wars home video, in this case as a rental, or just the rental market as a whole. With Redbox gone, physical media has yet another bullet wound, blaster wound, in trying to continue in the face of digital. And this marks maybe a nice memorial item, so to speak, for one of the ways that rental and physical media tried to keep up in relatively modern day here. So long, Redbox, we barely knew you, and thanks to Luke for providing this Redbox copy of 4K Solo here. Again, I would never have thought to look for it. It is an awesome thing to add to the collection here because I love things that act as sort of time capsules of where things stood in the market. And I'm so used to how things changed at retail that I certainly have a blind spot sometimes for rental. I appreciate it, Luke. And for all of you who are watching, thank you very much for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.